Hey gang, Jeff from War for the Tower wants you to know that one of his other shows, Shattered Worlds RPG, is fully caught up so you can totally chat with them as they make it. It's actual play, it's got robots and wizards. It's great. Come on down, look up Shattered Worlds RPG on your podcatcher of choice.
This is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering Doctor Who, Season 1, Episode 3.
What?
Says Amazon. The Snowmen.
Fuck Amazon.
In this episode, there's a man who has fed all of his rage and sadness and poor ideas into an intelligent snowman, and they are. I really don't. I don't know what to make of that, but I do enjoy Clara, so we got that going for us. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Jamie. That was the most meandering intro ever.
I got real thrown when I saw that Amazon was calling this season 1. That just shook me right there. And then the whole thing with the snowmen themselves, I was just like in the middle of talking about it and realized that I didn't really feel one way or the other about them. They didn't really like make much of an impression. But I definitely, you guys know that I'm all about like Victorian Christmas settings. So as far as that goes, that was enjoyable. Mm-hmm. I do have to admit that Richard E. Grant, who plays Dr. Simeon, I cannot stop thinking about him as Discount Geoffrey Rush. And he doesn't even look that much like Geoffrey Rush.
I don't think he looks anything like Geoffrey Rush.
I disagree on that. But not enough for that to be like the immediate thing that comes to mind. But yeah, so this episode is overdue. I'm sorry, everybody. Again, not my fault. It's Amazon is up to their old tricks, as you heard in the intro. I can't get over that. Ugh, why would you do this? But this was what you said, Jamie, because we talked about this off mic actually last week, that people had wanted to perhaps have like a live watch of the next episode, which I have watched already, The Bells of St. John.
No, this one.
They wanted a live watch of this one.
Yeah.
Why did they want a live watch of this one?
They wanted your reaction to Clara coming back.
Oh, okay.
The surprise
right.
of Clara.
I do not think that I would have had the reaction that y'all are looking for. Not that I wasn't surprised to see her back, but I mean, you guys know already, I mentioned that it's in the thumbnail.
Yeah.
So that was already shot to hell. But also, this show is really kind of like notorious for me, for people that you thought weren't coming back. So I wouldn't have the kind of shock for her turning up again that would probably happen in another show if that same thing were to happen. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think
I
think what this introduces is there's something about this girl. I don't think she's the same Clara that we see at the end. She's not the same Oswald that we met inside a Dalek. But there's something, I mean, they're obviously played by the same actress, so there's a question about her. Mm-hmm. It opens up a mystery of what's going on with this girl?
Right.
And that's how I felt when I saw this episode. And I really enjoyed her in Asylum of the Daleks. I thought she was incredibly charming. So pretty. And
She's so pretty, I can't handle it. I can't handle it. There are just some women that looking at them, I'm just like distracted. And she has that effect like the woman from The Girl in the Fireplace.
Yeah.
She's so beautiful. It hurts my brain.
Yeah. So when she showed back up, I was like, ooh, she's so fun to watch. And then she's so fun in this episode that I thought they were pulling something with, like, she's going to pop up occasionally and it's going to be like this ongoing mystery. And then I got to the end of it. I was like, or she's going to be around for a while? I'm so confused. So that was my reaction of like, what is the deal with Clara? Which I think is what Stephen Moffat wants. But I wasn't, even when I first watched this, I wasn't like, oh my God, about it, because there's very little in this show that makes me do that.
Yeah, I just like, they just have this sort of, what's the word I want? It's not even like, impermanence is the wrong word, but there's somebody dying, unless it's like a main character and it really feels like they're handling it in a certain way, I'm pretty much not going to be shocked by anybody suddenly appearing again.
I think after the return of River Song, the first time she comes back, that kind of opens up the possibility of anyone because of time travel. And adding to that, parallel universes and whatnot. Like,
exactly.
This isn't the kind of show where it is going to be a shock to your system when somebody suddenly is alive. Like, Coulson died in the Avengers, spoiler, and then is the star of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And you're like, but how though? Because I watched him die. And he's just a human being. So how did this work? And that was a good, like, whoa, wait, what's happening? Because it's not normal in that universe.
Right,
exactly. But in this universe, like, yeah, it's kind of endless possibilities because of time travel, because of time and space and whatever.
Yeah, I think, like, I would understand being, you know, kind of like, but it doesn't make sense. We saw this exact person who had died. How does that, but like you say, there is so much that's left open that I just figure they'll come up with an explanation. Yeah. It doesn't even have to make sense. The explanation doesn't have to be good, but they'll say something. And that'll just be the end of it.
I also watched this show called The Vampire Diaries, and I was watching The Vampire Diaries at this time as well. And there are these things called doppelgangers, which we all know what a doppelganger is. And it is Elena with multiple versions of her throughout time who look just like Elena but are different people. So here we have Oswin Oswald in the far future on a different planet inside a Dalek. And then we have this girl, Clara, in Victorian England, and I'm like, doppelganger.
Right, yeah. That makes sense. Makes as much sense as anything.
Yeah, I don't know that I put those two things together. It's a lot easier for me to think of doppelganger since I'm covering both of these shows currently. But they are shows that I watched, you know, week to week when they were on. And so when there's another version of the same girl, and I don't think it's the same girl, I'm just like, sure, doppelganger. Why not? It's just some ancestor of that future version that we met inside a Dalek. That's kind of what I thought she was.
And there's the Run You Clever Boy and Remember, which I think is supposed to be kind of like well, maybe she is the same person. Why wouldn't she say the same thing if she wasn't the same person, you know?
Right.
But having a thematic line that is just a little bit of a wink to the audience, but isn't actually significant to the plot, wouldn't be out of the question either. You know?
It just feeds into that mystery that we're building here. The question of Clara.
I have a question for you, and you might not be able to answer this because of spoilers and whatnot, but you had some feelings about Amy being the mysterious girl.
Yeah.
What is your feeling about Clara in that respect?
I found it super annoying. I found this to be a crutch that Stephen Moffat leans on. And if you look back at the episodes that he wrote before he was a showrunner, it was The Girl in the Fireplace. Why are these clockwork people after this particular girl? Mystery girl. Then there is Blink. Why is Sally Sparrow's name written on this wall? Why are these angels after her? Mystery girl. And then there's Amy Pond. And then there's Clara. And I felt like, dude, what is your deal? Not every girl has to be a mystery. It just felt like this was his trope that he can't let go of. Yeah. That doesn't mean that I didn't like Clara or like the mystery that comes with her. It didn't mean that I didn't like the whole mystery around Amy Pond, which I obviously enjoyed a lot more the second time around when we were discussing it. But I didn't not enjoy it. I never hated those stories the first time. I think I wasn't as engaged.
Right.
What I find annoying is that it seems to be something that Stephen Moffat can't help himself but to do. And I felt like not every girl needs to be a mystery that has to be solved. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about it that really just feels sort of patronizing. Like, it's always also a mystery that she doesn't really seem to know about. So it's not even like something that she has agency in. It's something that has happened to her from the outside that she doesn't have control over or knowledge of.
And maybe it boils down to Stephen Moffat doesn't understand women. Women are mysteries to him.
Right.
And he doesn't know how to write them otherwise.
I would be lying if I pretended that had not occurred to me. It was that he just doesn't understand women. And so he's just like, well, she's very mysterious. It's like that meme where it's, what do women want? Asks a man, and women are yelling to be treated equally, to not be sexually harassed. And he just keeps talking over them and says, I guess we'll never know. They're so mysterious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think he's come a long way. He has, much more openly admitted to his shortcomings in that area. He seems to be growing and learning. He still has not gotten to be great at it, if Sherlock is any kind of indication, which, again, I haven't watched, but I've heard that he doesn't write women great on that either.
Yeah, there's parts that I really enjoyed, and then there's some real problems.
I just got irritated that we get introduced to Amy Pond, and there's this whole mystery around her. Then we get introduced to Clara Oswald, and there's this whole mystery around her. And why can't a girl just be a girl?
Yeah, I think that when you say the word crutch, I feel like that is a good descriptor, because it feels like he's sort of basing an entire blueprint for a season around a mystery.
Yeah.
And he feels like the best way to have that be explicable within a season is to have it be a companion that's around for a season.
Right. Like the Doctor wouldn't be interested in the mystery if it weren't about this person he's decided he wants to take along with him. Whereas he could take her with him, and there is a mystery happening. And it doesn't have to be about her.
That she is uniquely qualified to
Yeah.
diagnose and participate in solving and whatever.
Right.
It's just this whole thing about it being about her and her having no knowledge of it that just feels really like it's just stripping these women of any sort of agency and in some ways personality, because they're getting involved in stuff by accident, which just doesn't seem like they are making choices that inform who they are.
Yeah.
You know, it's just sort of, well, you know, she's very curious and stubborn and headstrong. Oh, boy.
Oh,
yeah.
She's also clumsy and awkward.
Except at all types of combat.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I am going into this season, like, partially I really liked Clara, and I had said it would be fun for her to be a companion when we met her.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of me is like, oh, okay, that's fun, where I'm going to get the thing. And then another part of me is like, but you're doing it this way, and I don't really, like, I sort of want to take it back now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might have felt that way, honestly. Everybody really, really loved Amy Pond. I felt like I was in the minority because when I first watched it, and again, I don't know if this was because I went into the Stephen Moffat, Matt Smith era being very heartbroken about David Tennant leaving and maybe a little spiteful about everything. I thought Amy was very bratty.
Mm-hmm.
Rewatching it for this show, I did not think that. I thought she got damseled a little bit, but mostly I didn't find her to be as bratty as I originally did. I liked her a lot more.
Thought of her as bratty in the first, like, half.
Yeah.
And then she sort of started to come around for me.
Yeah. I just never let go of feeling that way about her, and I think I wasn't giving the show a fair shot, to be honest. Everybody knows I have completely changed how I feel about all of the, Pond era, and the Matt Smith era. And so much so that I said David Tennant is my doctor, but Matt Smith is the best doctor, in my opinion, which is completely different than how I felt before we started covering this. So I don't know if people rewatching this now might feel differently if they're watching it a little more critically or a little less critically or with a little less emotion involved, that they might feel differently about Clara. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people didn't like her, and I never completely understood why, because I do like her. I always liked Clara. So we'll have to see, because everything I liked has backfired on me. Everything I didn't like, other than how much I love Rory, other things have changed a lot in covering this.
Yeah, part of me is like, I really like her in terms of her, what's the word I want? She is very
spunky.
God, I hate that word, though.
I know.
I mean, yes, though. It's just, I hate that word so much, but that's fine. We can go with that. And she is, I'm always drawn to a companion that is going to be willing to, like, call the doctor on his shit. Mm-hmm. That appeals always. But I was, like, and I'm sorry I'll be spoiling a tiny bit on Bells of St. John, guys, so just, please, I'm sorry.
It's unavoidable.
The fact that we find out that, like, her know-how on computers seems to be something that was generated artificially by a thing that downloads information.
Yeah.
And we know that that's, like, a different version of her that we saw before. So maybe in that other version of her, that is not how that happened. Maybe that, maybe she was just trained and knows things in the other one, and that isn't actually how it worked. But it felt like that's what we were saying. So it's just, again, with things that just happen to a character.
Well, you can't, I know it's almost impossible not to, but you can't really compare the Clara in this episode, the Clara that you really meet in the next episode, and the Oswald that we met in that other episode, because essentially they're not the same person. So it's hard to say if, the Clara we meet in 2013 knows crap about computers until something's downloaded into her. Mm-hmm. But the one in the future, she grew up with completely different a completely different world. So could very easily be that good at computers because she's just a different person.
That's true. All right, fair.
Because, it's not like the one here in Victorian England is good with computers. Doesn't exist.
No. Yeah, there isn't really anything that's sort of set up that's similar in any way.
Right. She's very good with children. She's very good at storytelling and play acting. She looks amazing in a corset.
Listen, I think part of the pain of looking at her is that she looks so much like I looked when I was like 16, 17 years old. And I'm just faced with this like, oh man, could I have just kept looking like that? And it's just depressing to think on, so I have to not think about it.
I think it's funny that she's in this episode that takes place in Victorian England, and then later on, the actress Jenna Coleman went on to play Queen Victoria in a miniseries.
Oh, that's fun. All right, so let's talk about these snowmen with teeth. I like that.
Did you recognize the voice?
It's Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I did not recognize, but Amazon spoiled me about it.
No, when I was watching it, I was like, that voice. I know that voice. Is it Captain Picard? And Jason goes, it's Gandalf. What's wrong with you? And I was like, I'm not so sure. And I had to look it up because I wasn't convinced. And then once I saw that it was Ian McKellen.
It's just were like, it's by character names. It wasn't even like, oh, is that? No, it's Captain Picard.
But I didn't, I was like, I'm not sure. And I looked it up and it was Ian McKellen. And then I was like, well, duh. Yeah, now I hear it. It's totally Ian McKellen. But I at first was like, is this Patrick Stewart?
Yeah, he winds up being the voice of the ball thing.
Yeah, it's called the Great Intelligence, I think. Let me take a quick look.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like ball thing isn't exactly as elegant as
the Great Intelligence, which was a villain in old Doctor Who. So,
okay.
To keep the return of the Great Intelligence as a surprise, Ian McKellen was credited as voice of the Snowman in Radio Times and only as voice of the Great Intelligence in the closing credits.
What sneaky snakes.
The Great Intelligence was a mysterious entity. Few sources could agree exactly what the intelligence was. The second Doctor described it as a sort of formless, shapeless thing floating about in space like a cloud of mist, only with a mind and will. The intelligence was capable of possessing deceased bodies, controlling mechanized robot Yeti, forming fear-dependent snow creatures, and was often prone to choosing individuals to do its bidding from a distance.
Wow. All right.
So, because I had not watched old Doctor Who, I didn't know any of that watching this episode. And I didn't know any of that until I read that trivia after watching this episode again. So I didn't know that this was like an old villain return.
Yeah. And I do think that adds something, knowing that. I don't always feel that way. Like sometimes trivia is just like, oh, that's mildly interesting, but really who cares? And then there are things like that where I'm kind of like, oh, that actually sort of helps a lot with this being something that grabs my attention. Because it can be hard because this show is so like Monster of the Weeky. Mm-hmm. It can be tough to like get invested in a story with a villain that I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
And that I feel isn't going to ever come up again. And that's part of why sometimes I'll like tell myself, oh, I bet they'll come back, even though there's no real reason to think. Like the old box guys that appear, you know?
And little like box guys.
You know, like they appear. There's this whole thing with them. I don't really get it, how that could just be and then just completely stop being and they never come up again. But there was like a fucking invasion of planet Earth. And so I'm just sort of going with, I think we'll see them again. I have nothing to base that on. It's just that I want that to be something that means more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think something like this, I would feel a little bit more like grounded in the story if I knew that ahead.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's like, if there's an elegant way to do that. You know?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's kind of I feel like that's still kind of a spoiler, so it's not something that I would alert you to. I do watch these, I think, before you end up watching them, because I think you watch, like, right before we record, right?
Usually. This one I watched yesterday. But
okay.
Yeah, usually.
So, I can start alerting to you to, like, hey, so the villain or the monster in this episode or whatever is from the past. Just as, like, a heads up, but not give you any other info.
It's, like, it's tough because, like, when I say it would be good to know, I don't even mean for you to tell me. I feel like for the show to tell me.
Okay. Well,
and
they assume, which is a problem.
That's the thing, you know, like they assume. I understand because they don't really, they're not in a position to really do anything else. They have to assume because it's other than that.
But I disagree.
Playing a previously on from several years, decades ago that is going to look really goofy.
I disagree only because by this point in the run of new Doctor Who, there are so many people that have only watched this potentially from 9 on. Maybe even only from 11, from when Matt Smith started, because that's when it got really popular in the United States, was with Matt Smith. So to assume that everybody has, like, an encyclopedic knowledge of old Doctor Who if they're watching the show is not fair, because they know that a large portion of the audience does not.
Mm-hmm.
So giving us some kind of dialogue or context that this is a character that existed before, that the Doctor has encountered before, would be helpful. Because there's nothing,
I think so.
There's no indication in this episode that is the case.
Yeah, and it's sort of odd. Again, I know that I've mentioned this before, and I'm not trying to be like to harp on something too much, but the fact that they had that whole bit with Amy Pond's introduction of the Doctor, it seems like they are aware that not everybody knows.
They're absolutely
aware. They just don't want to like completely commit to that, and it's like they're trying to straddle this line between being welcoming to like new viewers, but also like wanting to make diehard fans feel like they're in on something. Does that make sense? Where it's like a knowing about a thing and being that deep in the fandom that you're aware of a character from so long ago. It's like they kind of want their fans to feel excited about that. And I get it in a way, but really it just, I don't know who that's helping. Like, they're going to watch either way.
I feel like Stephen Moffat does that less. Like, Russell T Davies grew up obsessed with Doctor Who. It was like his favorite thing. And then he got to, do this reboot. And there were lots of little callbacks to things from earlier Doctor Who. Not just the Daleks and the Cybermen, but there were little things that, we've had listeners point out to us.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't as many of those in Stephen Moffat's run until recently. We had the callback to the Brigadier, which really was because that actor died, and so they wanted to pay tribute to him. I don't know that they would have mentioned him otherwise. Now we have this Great Intelligence, which is a villain that was in a few episodes sometime in the previous 5 decades, and then we still have Daleks and Cybermen because there's some contractual reason.
I just can't get over that one.
Well, the Daleks really especially, not the Cybermen. I don't know why they keep bringing Cybermen back, but the Daleks was, in order to use them, they had to agree to use them once a year.
Right.
It was, and I guess it was either that or never, and you can't go with never when the Daleks are like the Doctor's biggest adversary, other than the Master.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But usually we get some kind of context to understand why the Doctor doesn't like these creatures or this person or whatever. And in this episode, there just was no indication whatsoever that this was something he'd ever encountered before. He makes reference to something about the tunnels, the London Underground, how that should upset you. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only reference. And I didn't get it until I read the trivia and found out that in one of the episodes, he, like, trapped the Great Intelligence in the London Underground or something.
Oh, that's what he meant. Yeah, that was one of those lines that I was like, I must have missed a detail somewhere in the episode. Yeah. And a lot of times I'll run across that and I'll just be like, whatever, Jamie will explain it.
No, but I didn't get it either because it references something specific in an episode from 40 years ago, and then there's no explanation otherwise.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should probably start talking about what happened, though, huh?
Sure.
I guess. It's fine. So we start off with this little boy named Walter who's playing outside, and he isn't playing with the other children because the other children are silly and he doesn't need them. And he's saying this to himself, and his mother is sort of like watching him and worried about the fact that he isn't engaging with the other kids. And he's muttering to himself about how he doesn't need them. And then as he does this, the snowman begins to reply to him, begins to repeat him, really, not reply. Mm-hmm. And he's about to, like, walk away from it because it definitely freaks him out. But it's sort of like, because it's saying a thing that he believes, it sort of feels like he gets drawn back to it because of it reinforcing what he already believes. And I don't know if I'm reading into that a little bit too much or what, you know. But he, like, runs away, and it's not until it says, don't need anyone else, again, that he, like, skids to a halt and turns back around. So it felt like something, the fact that the snowman repeated that specifically felt like a sign to him or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I might be just over analyzing that. So we cut from that moment to him as an adult watching these like workers harvest snow from the sides of these snowmen that are sitting out. I don't know if it's supposed to be like outside his house, outside of the workshop, maybe.
It's unclear because they get taken away back to his institute.
Right. So
I don't know. It very well could be his house. He's hired these people.
Yeah. Well, regardless, this assistant comes in and says, the last of the arrivals, or not his assistant, he is the assistant. And he comes in and tells the intelligence the last of the arrivals have been sampled. As humanity celebrates, so shall it end. And the intelligence asks, when will the final piece be ready? And he says, it's in hand. I serve you in this as in everything else. And the intelligence asks, what about those dudes that helped us out tonight? Are you going to be able to keep them quiet? And he's like, oh, yeah, no problem. And he says, I have to feed them. And it's a pretty good joke, actually. Because he's like, I have to feed them. And you think that he's talking about the men being fed. Mm-hmm. And they clearly also think that. But then he goes out and there's a bunch of men standing around waiting. And they're like, hey, it's been a bit and we're hungry and waiting. We don't see any food. And he's like, oh, don't you? And then spike-toothed fucking snowmen show up. There's like these gouts of snow flying all over the place. I really wanted blood in this scene. I won't lie. But unfortunately, there is no blood. And he says, I said I'd feed you. I never said to whom. And that is just such a stupid line that I really liked. It was just such a, like, we'd love to have you for dinner kind of, like, fucking moment, you know?
Like, if Hannibal Lecter were more...
a dad.
Yeah.
Dad jokes from Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah. Let's write that book. It'll just be a series of tweets, and we'll get it published into a book. Dad Jokes by Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, I feel like that could be a pretty good Twitter account, actually. So, yeah, those guys all get destroyed because apparently this is all just a big cover. And then we cut to the interior of the Rose and Crown, which is a bar that the new Clara works at.
I was surprised, since this is supposed to be Victorian England, that there's still Tudor roses all around. Because the rose that they show at the Rose and Crown is, you see a little glimpse of it, is a Tudor rose.
I feel like that's the sort of thing that just doesn't go away.
Okay.
With the change. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have evidence for this, but it's sort of like if I picture it as someplace being called, like, the Eisenhower Cafe, you know, and Eisenhower is no longer in office, but we're not just going to change our name and repaint our sign and everything.
I guess that's true. I just think of monarchies as being different, especially because a lot of times they're gained by destroying the previous monarchy. That's not how she came to power, though.
So yeah, and she's just so pretty, you guys. I don't mean to, like, harp on her appearance so much, but it's just, she is just so perfectly symmetrical. She has the most adorable nose.
She really does. I was going to say, her little turned up nose, it's so cute.
Just, she has a very good nose. And noses are in particular for me, like, a thing. Like, I love a good nose. Owen has an excellent nose. And so when I see her, like, in this bar, and she's just, like, you know, looking around, observing the crowd, and sort of has this look on her face like, ha, a job well done. And all I can think is, that woman, if she really worked there and looked like this, would never get a moment's peace. It would be so trying. I was saying the other day to a friend of mine about how I wish that I had become a stripper when I had the chance. And my friend was like, well, you still have a chance. There's not really, like, a limit on weight or age that, you know, like, there are people who go for everything. And I've seen every body type and every age at strip clubs. And I was like, yeah, that's not what I mean when I say when I had the chance. I mean, back in the days where I had the tolerance to deal with dudes in that sort of environment, because I just don't have the fucking patience anymore. I can't, like, pretend be nice, pretend to flirt.
Yeah.
The way that I could do when I was 20. And it still was a compliment to me, and I still found it sort of fun. I am tired now, and go fuck yourself. You know, it's just like, I just don't have it. And when I saw her here, it just made me think of the jobs that I have had, and the look on her face of feeling sort of like it seems almost detached from what's going on around her. I was just like, I don't think that she would be given the space to do that. I really don't, unfortunately. So she steps outside, and as she's opening the door, it's just this empty courtyard that's filled with snow. But when she turns back around, as she's closing the door behind her, there is a snowman that has appeared there very suddenly. And somebody walks by, and she asks him, did you make this snowman? And he just says no. And she says, well, who did? It just appeared a second ago from nowhere. And he stops and turns around, and it's the doctor with a real surly expression, a real hunched sort of posture, a gait that says, "Don't fucking bother me." And even though it's clear that he really doesn't want to, like, talk to anybody or get into a thing, he can't help be curious. And he turns around. And did he not recognize her here?
I think he did.
He did? Okay.
I think he did.
I was, like, waiting for him to say something or get a look on his face, and he, like, looks at her and then looks at the snowman without much change in expression. It just didn't feel like he knew who she was when he looked at her the first time.
I think he was already kind of following her or keeping tabs on her.
Oh. Okay. I didn't really think about that. So, okay, yeah, I guess you're right, because he asks what her name is, and she says Clara, and he says, "Oh, that's a nice name, you should definitely keep it." Which really is the sort of thing you'd say to somebody that you knew under a different name before.
Right,
so
and then
I guess that makes sense.
When he has a phone call with Vastra next, he says something that made me think that he already was aware that there was this version of this girl here.
Do you want to mention it?
My notes don't say exactly what he says, and you have your what are they?
I don't know what you're talking about.
When they show the dialogue on the screen, my brain just lost
subtitles.
My brain lost the entire word. I was like, screen cap is not the right word. You have the subtitles, which I can't remember exactly what he says, but I thought he was sort of indicating that he has been sort of trying to figure out who this person is already.
Okay, that makes sense. He gets in this carriage, and who's driving? Is this?
It's
Drax or whatever his name is. Strax, that's the one. Oh, he's a good time. I find him very funny.
Yeah, he's very amusing.
I want to hear him say again, "I hope that you heal fully so that I can kill you on the field of battle," or something. I really like that line a lot. I want to hear that again. His delivery on things is so excellent. Permission to express my disapproval of your current however that went. But yeah, the driver says, like, you aren't going to be able to resist getting involved in this one. It always begins with the same 2 words. And he says, "What 2 words?" And then Clara drops upside down from the roof of the carriage into the compartment and says, "Doctor Who?" And I was like, oh, show. All right, fine.
It's actually Vastra who says that to him.
Vastra. Okay, my bad. So then we cut to credits. We have a weird, like, I was sort of paying attention this time to the credits because you were saying how, like, they've been sort of thematically consistent with whatever's going on in the episode. And this one I couldn't tell. It just looked like space, and there's, like, some flickers of Snow Lake, but I can't tell if they're snow or if they're just stars.
I think they stopped after the last episode.
Okay. And then we come back to sad Dr. Simeon. And he just... I appreciated finding out that he's not even, like, really in control of the situation. I mean, it's very clear that he's not anyway, but I couldn't understand his motivations for the thing. Mm-hmm. And the fact that really what it comes down to is he doesn't have any. I was like, all right, you know what? That makes more sense. That I accept that. So yeah, he says, what's growing inside it when it is ready is ours. He's talking about this pond, right? When he says that? Because the pond is like cracking.
Yeah.
And he's stepping outside, like observing it and saying this to this dude. But I did not like put together that that was what he meant.
I don't think you're supposed to that early on.
Right. But I mean, like, I don't like, it's not even that I didn't know there was something in the pond for him. I didn't know when he said whatever's growing inside it that he even meant the pond. Like, it felt like such a completely disconnected comment. Mm-hmm. And I just completely like missed. I just missed it. And then we hear the story about the governess dying several years ago, who drowned in this very pond, which then froze. He says, you didn't find her until a month later when the ice finally melted. And this man is just like, yes, thank you. I know what happened. I did. It's not something that you easily forget, finding a fucking body in a pool in your yard. And he says, the ice also remembers. And this man says, but what do you even want here? And this is when he gives him the card and is like, what's growing in the pond is ours. Good evening. And I was like, is that something that you can say? Like, can you just give a guy a card and be like, we're going to bust this thing and take something out of it, and you aren't going to have any say in it. To a dude that, from his clothing and bearing, it feels like he has a station in society, I would think.
And it's on his property.
Right.
And what happened on his property, so what right does this dude have to the ice?
Right. It was just a weird moment of this guy, like, completely accepting what he says and watching him walk away with no protest. And I was like, that does not feel like how a man like that would react to somebody saying something like that to him. But it doesn't matter. He walks away and gets sort of interrupted by Vastra and Jenny. And I love when he says something about their, like, questionable relationship. And Vastra says, I resent your implication of impropriety. We are married. And he just gives her this look of just like, wait, what? It's a good moment. I enjoyed it. And I also love when he says, I bet people don't know that you're and he flips her veil back and you think he's going to be like, an alien. And he just says, a woman. And I was like, yeah, that works too. That makes sense.
Well, and this is all in the rumor that Dr. Arthur Doyle based
Arthur
Sherlock...
Conan Doyle.
Wait, what's his name? Arthur Conan Doyle?
Correct.
Okay, sorry. That he based his Sherlock Holmes stories on this mysterious great detective and her assistant that has been going around, and like no one's going to believe that Sherlock Holmes is based on a woman.
Right. I love when the doctor turns up later as Sherlock and is just throwing wild fucking like guesses at the wall, hoping that something sticks.
I wonder if this episode is why Stephen Moffat then was like, I should do a Sherlock Holmes show.
I mean, obviously he loves a mystery.
And
that's like so much of what
Sherlock
these circles around. Yeah. So, it works. So, let's see. How does this scene wrap up? I'm trying to find the spot. Oh, yeah. They're talking to each other after he sort of, like, bails from the conversation with a twirl of his mustache. And we have Vastra saying, like, I think we're going to need the doctor and pray for his help. And then we cut to the doctor, who is looking at the snow and noticing that it is new and possibly alien. And Strax is with him. And every suggestion he makes is somehow related to a grenade, explosions, exploding grenades, and other things that explode or hurt people. And he is just a delight. I really enjoy him so much. I could just do with this guy in general in every episode as the person being way too aggressive about every problem they are faced with, just being like, I think we should kill them. Because honestly, there are times where I feel like we need somebody who says that, because I am also feeling that way. But, you know, that's just me also being bloodthirsty as I am wont to be. There is a character in a book series that I'm covering called the Cradle series, which I 1000% recommend if you guys are looking for escapist literature right now. Super fun. And he is a very angry fire turtle who's basically like a descendant of a dragon, but he's just a turtle, but he is also like really badass. And he has a very Strax energy to him, in that he wants everything to be a fight and a confrontation. And because of Strax's appearance, he's also a tiny bit turtle-ish. And so the two of them have really sort of married in my brain and are a similar looking kind of creature.
So this fire turtle, is he like a humanoid, or is he literally...
No, he's a giant turtle that, like, breathes fire, shoots fire, is made of partially fire.
Can speak.
And can speak.
Okay.
And is extremely aggressive. So there's a part when somebody is trying to start a fight with our hero. I use that word loosely. And he says, "Is this dude trying to fight me?" And the turtle says, "He does not have confidence in his own techniques, and therefore tries to single you out of the pack in front of everyone, because he knows that you are considered their enemy, and he seeks to prove himself in this weak, pathetic way, which is the true method of a coward. Crush him." And, like, the poor hero had just, like, kind of nudged him and be like, is he trying to fight me? But the turtle just says this shit super loud so that the entire crowd hears him, and basically puts him in a position where, like, now he has to fight him. And it's really, like, inconvenient and frustrating. And that feels like some shit that Strax would definitely do if he had a more carrying voice. I feel like he would instigate a lot more fights.
Probably.
You know? And if he breathed fire... I feel like that would also, you know, Strax is like not an intimidating figure, and so he can say these sorts of things and it feels funny.
Yeah.
Versus the fire turtle, who can say these things and you're just like, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, because he is genuinely like a scary creature. But yeah, I'm sure Strax would be best buds, and they would just tear the universe up. So this is I am opposed to your current apathy. That's the line. It's a good one. If I'm ever in need of advice from a psychotic potato dwarf, you'll certainly be the first to know. Listen, Doc. Don't you talk that way to my favorite psychotic potato dwarf, sir. Have some fucking respect, okay? I didn't appreciate it. I didn't like it. This dude I was gonna say he's a good egg. I'm not sure that's true. But he's there and taking an interest, which is more than I can say for you. Yeah. So he's on my good side, all right? Shut up. So yeah, if the snow is new and alien, shouldn't we be making some attempt to destroy it? Be reasonable. Meanwhile, in the background, the carriage is shaking and Clara is yelling for them to let her out. And I was like, she's locked in there? What is going on? This is very confusing because we don't get an update about how he handled this situation. It cuts from her saying Doctor Who to them conversing outside, you know? So I was like, what are you doing? Did he just leave her in there? And it turns out he did just leave her in there.
He locked her in there.
Yeah, he locked her in so that he could go and, like, have a conversation at his leisure. What are you doing, dude?
Also, he wants to investigate this snow. And also, there's this memory worm that he wants to use on her to make her forget all of this.
Right.
So she can just go on her way.
Which, ew. Gross. He's gonna roofie her so that he doesn't have to fucking do anything. You know what, sir? I am disgusted.
Is it roofing if he's just trying to keep her out of harm's way and not get her involved in whatever he's involved with?
Well, first of all, drugging somebody so that they don't remember a thing, I call it roofing, no matter what the purpose is. Second of all, you are being very generous in your estimation that he's trying to keep her out of harm's way when it really seems like he just doesn't want to be bothered, and he knows that if she remembers, she will pester him.
Oh, yes, so, I'm sure that's also part of it.
I think that's most of it, Jamie. I really do.
He doesn't want to get attached to people anymore. He's been spending all this time hiding in the TARDIS on a cloud.
Whining.
Not wanting to have companions anymore. Not wanting to get involved in the problems of the universe, or specifically the problems of humans, though I don't know why he chose to hang out above Victorian England if he doesn't want to get involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I am kind of over the Doctor's cyclical, never mind, I don't want to help people, and I don't like people, and I don't want a companion thing anymore.
Well, it's not that he doesn't like people, it's that he doesn't want to get hurt. He doesn't handle heartbreak well.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm over. Like, just grow up, dude. Seriously, you are so old. You should have figured out how to cope with this by now. Just get over it. Figure it out. Go to therapy. Get a therapist. Can you imagine? Oh my god, what would a therapist to the Doctor even, like, look like? How would that work?
It would look like River Song.
That's no good. Oh my god. That's a terrible idea. She would just encourage all of his worst tendencies.
She can also keep him in line sometimes.
Yeah, but that's not what a therapist is for. That's not their
I think
job.
we've established that I don't know what a therapist is for because I'm too scared to go to one.
That's true. We have established that for those of you who were not privy to our off-mic conversation and don't know what we're talking about. But yeah, so this whole thing with him just like wandering around and being like, I'm not helping anymore, I'm not getting involved. And then he has this whole thing talking to Strax about how, like, I've learned that the universe doesn't care. And I'm just like, oh God, get over yourself.
I agree with Strax that his apathy is annoying.
Yes. Look, Doc, there are people with real problems out there. And I just don't really have a lot of sympathy for you at this point. You know, like, I just don't. I get very impatient with him when he's like this.
I understand. And if you don't want to be around people, then don't be around people.
Right?
Go somewhere that has no one.
It's like he wants to be in a place where he can reject, like, actively be seen rejecting helping. He's, like, being very performative about the whole thing. Just, if you really didn't want to help and get involved in stuff, you would make it so that nobody could find you.
Yeah.
But instead you are here living in a place with creatures that are alien also, that are aware of who you are, that I guess know where to find you, or it's a coincidence? I'm not really even sure in terms of, like, them running into him or how... Because he's in the carriage that's being driven by... What's her name?
No, it's being driven by Strax.
I thought the character, because
he called her. He has a little phone in there.
Oh, right.
He called.
Okay,
he called Vastra.
I forgot that we see that phone. Yeah, you're right. So why are you going to be hanging out with Strax here unless you want to, like, let them know that you're not helping? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just feels very much like it's like the kind of thing where you want somebody to ask you out even though you are not interested in them, just so that you get the chance to turn them down. It just feels very petty in its way to me. But anyway, so Strax, long story short, grabs the memory worm and forgets everything. It's honestly a pretty amusing moment. Emergency! I believe I have been run over by a cab. He's so funny. And Clara's questioning the doctor about who Strax is and says something about how ugly he is. And the doctor's like, listen, he died for me one time. And she's like, yeah, how does that work? And he's like, shut up, I'm not talking to you about it. And he goes back to the TARDIS and she follows him. And hops up onto that ladder and climbs up and realizes as she's climbed up that nobody can see her from where she's standing. And she keeps going, following the sound of his footsteps, up this, like, twisty, cool staircase that looks awesome.
It's all very Mary Poppins.
It's great. It's a very fun time. I like this. And finally, she comes to the TARDIS and she knocks on it and he comes to the door and she, like, ducks. She does the ring the bell, run away bit, which is actually very funny to see when the doctor doesn't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut to Mr. Simeon again, Dr. Simeon. And this thing is saying the snow will fall tomorrow again, but stronger. And the dreaming child and the drowned woman will give us form at last. Tomorrow the snow will fall, and so shall mankind. And every time that he does this, like one of these scenes, he is scooping snow into this big globe. Like he's adding sugar to his coffee, basically. And then we cut to Clara, and she's waking up in bed, and it doesn't seem like I thought that she might not remember what had happened. I thought the doctor wiped her memory. Does he try to do that?
No, because he doesn't see her up there.
So why, did she just go up, ring the bell, he looks around, and then she just went home and went to bed?
Yeah. I mean, how do you explain that to yourself? Like, what just happened? I just climbed an invisible staircase up to a cloud where there's this weird box that this guy walked into.
I just don't see myself turning around and going home. I gotta be honest, like I asked that question with genuine desire for an answer because I thought that I had missed a thing there. It just didn't make sense to me that she would follow him up there, ring the bell and duck and leave. And that not only would she just decide to, like, go to bed, but that the doctor wouldn't step outside the TARDIS and walk around and find her. Like, there was just a lot about how that all went down that I was like, what? Really?
He did step outside the TARDIS and walk around, but
Well, he walks he doesn't put a lot of effort in.
Yeah, one side at a time.
Yeah.
And then she runs down the little staircase and drops, like, a shawl or something from her dress, and he does pick it up and knows that she was there, but...
Okay. I think that is what I missed.
He's like... Oh, he sees her. He does see her running down the staircase, but he is like, I'm not getting involved.
Okay. Gotcha. I don't know how I missed that part. Because I'm, like, looking at it now. It's just a really brief moment, I guess. so I didn't catch it. So she is heading out to her other job. And it turns out that she is a governess. And, you know, this is her secret identity, basically, is being a proper lady employed by a proper family, doing very proper work compared to, you know, being a wench in some dive bar. And it's pretty fun because the kids are like, hey, talk to us in your secret low-class voice, basically.
Yeah.
And she's like, yep, here's my actual voice, but you guys can think that I'm putting this on for fun. Weird bit of code switching there. So she's teaching the kids, and they are in the backyard, and she's noticing the fact that everything else has like thawed out, but they keep calling it the pond. It's like a fountain, kind of, but they're calling it a pond, so I'll call it a pond. And that's part of the significance later, is that she says the word pond. Mm-hmm. She notices that it is still frozen and is just like, that's really kind of weird, isn't it? And she's just sort of standing in the square later to try and get help because she realizes that this is like significant. Just yelling doctor at the sky. Mm-hmm. And I really love everybody just being like, girl, what are you even doing? And Jenny just tells her, like, you're going to attract too much attention. Then, again, we get Doctor Who. And I have to mention that in The Bells of St. John, this joke is done again. And the Doctor, like, really leans into it. And there's a part of me that rather enjoyed that. Him leaning into it and being like, I never get tired of people saying that. Like, I bet you don't. That was one of the writers saying that. So this is so, like, I'm sorry guys if this seems disjointed, but I'm having trouble because of how sort of roundabout it is to get to the main issue.
Yeah.
Remembering the order in which things happen, because it doesn't feel like the snowmen are really the thing. It feels like Clara is really the thing. And so I'm like focusing on her, but then kind of like doubling back because I'm like, well, no, we got to talk about the snowmen. But then I'm like, but do we though? All this to say that she goes to Vastra and asks her for help and uses the word pond. And that is what Vastra tells the Doctor when she calls him up and gets him involved. And
I like that scene because I think it's pretty clever to be like, I'm going to ask you a question, but you can only give one-word answers. Mm-hmm. And based on these one-word answers, will determine whether or not I get the Doctor for you.
Yeah, I think that's like... Have you ever tried doing something like that?
No.
It is so fucking hard. I played a like party game with some of Owen's family, like way back before the whole pandemic thing, and it was a game that got progressively, like, first you would you wrote like a bunch of different things, person, place, and thing on scraps of paper. Everybody did, put them in a hat, and then when you took them out, you could use every word but that word to describe the thing, and somebody would have to guess what it was. Then you would put it back in the hat. After everybody got a turn and you used them all up, you would pull them out again. And this time you had to act it out, and they had to try and remember from the first round what words had been used, and then use that to inform what they were seeing with you miming whatever it was. But then the final round, you were using those same scraps of paper, same words again, but you could get them to guess what it was by saying only one word that was not the word on the paper.
This is exactly how you play Celebrity.
Is it?
Yeah, but
okay,
without it being celebrities.
I have never played Celebrity, so I do not know But
at least that's how we played Celebrity when I played with my friends when I lived in LA. It's exactly the same way.
You played Celebrity while you lived in LA.
They're the only people I ever played it with, but it was pretty fun. I still get made fun of because I didn't know who the president of France was.
Who is that?
I don't remember. I still don't remember. But
yeah,
my
I gotta
friend
be
Sarah
honest here,
will
guys.
still make fun of me about it.
But yeah, so when you get to that final round and you just have to come up with a word, it gets really hard. And that's like going into it knowing, part of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes it's really
right
easy. You got to pick the right word, and you've got to know what the right word is going to be for the person you're up with, because you'd have to go up and use one word, and you would have a partner, and that partner had to get it.
Yeah.
If everybody else got it, it didn't matter. And so I would, Owen would be the one interpreting on my end, and I would have to like say something that I knew he'd know. So like one of them was Beyonce, and I just said lemonade, and he got it, But if it was like his grandma, who I had been teamed up with that time, I can't say lemonade. She's not going to know what the fuck I'm talking about. She'd have been like, iced tea! Like, which, actually, that's kind of funny.
Palmer.
So anyway, then we have the scene with the doctor turning up as Sherlock Holmes.
Can I point out, because you might have missed it, that he's using Amy's reading glasses?
Oh, I definitely missed it. Aw, that's kind of sweet. I like that. That just feels like a thing that you would do, Mm-hmm. I like it. Takes one to snow one. I'm sorry, it's so stupid, but I really liked it. And this is when he figures out that this thing isn't what it looks like, and he is not what he looks like. And this dude is like trying to sneak out behind him, and he just uses his screwdriver over his shoulder to lock the doors so that the guy can't leave or do anything. And eventually he manages to like adjust the sound settings, for lack of a better word, and prove that this thing is actually a child disguising itself to look like a person. A child's mind and memories and impulses, I guess, is sort of like the way that he frames it. And this, like, far from being, because it seems like the doctor really thinks that if he does this, that's going to thwart this thing's plans.
Yeah.
But this thing is, like, pretty glad, as it turns out, that the doctor did that, because now it frees this dude up for basically, like, total possession. Possession feels like the wrong word, because this man was, like, created, right? He's not like a real human being. He was made.
Simeon?
Yeah, wasn't he?
No, he's the little boy grown up. But he's just been controlled by this thing the whole time.
I kind of had thought that it absorbed somehow the little boy and then made like a version. Do you know what I mean?
He's just basically controlling him.
Gotcha, okay. But yeah, so now Simeon can be completely controlled by this snow monster. Which is bad news. It's not great. But I'm jumping ahead a little bit because that doesn't quite happen until after we get the ice governess.
Yeah.
Who is hilarious. She's real freaky looking. I feel like if she weren't like made of ice, if it's more the way that she moves.
Yeah.
She's just, I feel like she could be real freaky if she were done a different way in like a horror movie. Not that she isn't freaky anyway, but the whole thing is just so, it's just really odd with it being the ice. And she has like this personality that's been sort of like frozen into her of being a terrible, like mean woman.
Yeah.
Who constantly wants to punish all of them. And so she's like chasing after them and scolding them. And the doctor earlier, they get attacked, or was it earlier or is it later? When he realizes that, like, Clara's thinking about the snowmen. And that's what's sort of drawing them.
Yeah, that was earlier when they were still in the carriage. Before she follows him up the staircase.
So this is when she tells the little girl, like, she's here because you've been thinking about her, having dreams about her, I think is the thing. And think about her melting. And Doctor Who pops up with his puppet show. Sir, now is not the fucking time. But nevertheless, so they are in the house. This evil governess ice lady explodes, and they're asking if she'll come back, and he says, "No, don't worry. She is currently draining through your carpet," and then says he has an antifreeze setting on his screwdriver. Question, Doctor. Does your screwdriver yet work against wood? I feel like you're prioritizing the wrong things here. And I would like to know if you could handle a door. Because that feels like something that you should be worrying about a little bit more than freezing things.
Or not freezing things.
Or not freezing things, you know.
Yeah.
Apparently that's not something that he is... I would like to know if he added the antifreeze setting before or after this all began. But, regardless. So, meanwhile, Simeon has pulled up and he has like this huge machine that is just shooting snow over the wall of the estate. Onto the grounds of the house. Mm-hmm. And this is when we begin to get the resurrection, I guess. Is that the word, of the ice lady?
Yeah.
Because she begins to reform. It's pretty great, honestly, to watch her form out of the, like, swirling snow. I think that's a pretty cool effect, even though it's not, like, amazing looking. But this governess, like, shows up just as Clara is ascending on the ladder to get to the TARDIS. And I should mention that the Doctor makes a deal with her that he will help everybody if she will agree to come with him. Which I think is extremely shady. He's holding her hostage a little bit. And for somebody who's like, I don't want a companion, to then be like, well, I'll only help if you'll agree to be my companion. I'm going to need a little bit more consistency from you, sir, because I just don't know what it is you want out of life anymore.
I don't think he does either, but also how can you look at her and be like, I mean, if you'll come with me, I'll definitely help.
It's just, how about you just help people because they're about to be eaten by snowmen? How about that?
That's too easy.
Christ. So what is the next thing that happens? Because he says little. Oh, yeah, that's right. She comes in and he says, come on, Pete, say it. Everybody does. And she says something about how it's littler on the outside.
Yeah. Smaller on the outside.
It's smaller on the outside. And they have, like, the swoop of the Doctor Who music, the theme, right before she says it. And it's really nice because there's almost like a record scratch moment when she doesn't say the thing. And I thought that was pretty funny. I like that.
She asks if there's a kitchen on board.
Yes, see? She's asking the questions that need asking because she likes to make soufflés. So, it turns out that this creature, this ice governess, has snuck on, grabs her. Clara gets dragged backwards, drops the key, and is pulled right off the edge of whatever the invisible platform is and dropped. And it's honestly pretty messed up. this ice lady is still, like, grabbing at her and reaching for her even as she's falling in a way that indicates to me that she doesn't, like, know what she's doing, doesn't realize what's even... She's just going after her blindly, pretty much, you know? Because if it was just, you need to go and get her so that you can kill her, you've accomplished your goal, and so one would expect it to sort of, like, lose interest in its mission because it's done. But it seems more like it wants to maybe just eat her the way that the snowmen ate those guys. I don't know. Can she?
I don't know.
She feels like a different thing than those.
She is a different thing because the ice basically from that pond scanned a human DNA. Mm-hmm. So it's a more evolved creature than the snowmen.
Right, okay.
And so the simian or the intelligence wants to make basically like an army of these like ice people.
Which, that would be pretty cool. They'd be like the White Walkers.
I wonder if they'd be as ineffective as the White Walkers.
Burn. Alright, so this is when we go to the doctor trying to... He wipes the Dr. Simeon's memory with the memory worm. Mm-hmm. And that does not have the effect that he had intended. All of these freaky snowmen with their teeth begin to grin. And I really like the look of their teeth. Like, they look like shark teeth. Mm-hmm. The way that they're weirdly, like, angled and whatnot. And I'm trying to, like, I watched and I'm like, I don't even remember how, because all I remember really about how this ends is the fact that the doctor knows that Clara is still going to be around. He intends to see her again. But I don't remember exactly what he does to, like, win against the Iceman, Ice Corpse, Ice
the intelligence?
Zombie. It's more than just the intelligence. It's the simian body possessed by it, which I feel like deserves its own name. Okay,
so he has a box containing the piece, or he says he has a box containing the pieces of the ice governess, which the doctor is saying he'll give to Simeon. I can't remember why, to bring him to his institute. So then this is when he realizes that it's a reflection of Simeon's dark side. The snow globe explains that the dream outlives the dreamer, zapping Simeon with electricity. Without the memories the worm erased, there is plenty of room for the entity, so Simeon is now a puppet rather than the other way around. So basically, the intelligence was like alive because of, like, he was sharing Simeon's life force or whatever. But now Simeon's just a full puppet, so he can just live in him.
Right.
He attacks the doctor and pulls back in pain as the snow in the globe turns to rain. So Clara, sorry, I guess when Clara's, like, dying, she starts to cry. That's, like, affecting this whole thing. And the snow turns to rain, and that, like, defeats the intelligence. It makes no sense.
Okay, good. Because there are times where I'm like, I really feel like I should remember this, and I feel bad that I don't. And then you will tell me the thing, and I'm like, that's why I don't remember, because none of it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Yeah, he says there was a critical mass of snow at the house. If something happened there, and he tastes the rain, and she says it's salt water, because Vaster's right next to him, and he says, it's not raining, it's crying. The only force on earth that could drown the snow, a whole family crying on Christmas Eve.
Sure.
Okay. I don't understand why the house was like, why they can generate that.
It doesn't explain it.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, good.
And so Clara dies, and the last thing she says is, "Run, you clever boy, and remember."
Mm-hmm. And he does remember from the last time that she said that. Mm-hmm. And we will hear her say that again when she's trying to remember the login key for her Wi-Fi.
Yep.
So it ends with the doctor like excitedly running through the he brings flowers to her grave.
Oh, he doesn't recognize her because he never saw her before. He knew her name, but he never saw Oswin because she was inside a Dalek.
So him just saying it's a nice name, you should keep it, was just him being a weirdo.
I guess. I think like he was drawn to her for some reason, or Vastra, like, I don't know. But it's not until he sees her gravestone and sees her name is Clara Oswin Oswald, and he remembers that the woman he met in the Dalek Asylum went by the name Oswin Oswald and also enjoyed making souffles.
Okay, yeah, because I thought that there was a moment later when she asks if there's a kitchen. She says, because I like making souffles, and that really gets his attention.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I thought, but all right, good. Things are coming together. But
Vastra did kind of point him in her direction, and we don't really know why, except that maybe it's just because the intelligence is connected to where Clara's working as a governess, and that was all why she was trying to lead the doctor to that house.
Okay.
I guess.
Okay. So, yeah, once he recognizes this, he gets very excited, and he is determined to find her again. Mm-hmm. He says the same woman, she died both times. And he just says, you two stay there, don't move an inch. And they ask if he's coming back, and he just says, I shouldn't think so. I'm like, well, then why can't they move? Just let them move. What are you talking about? And Vastra, she ends the episode with, perhaps the universe makes bargains after all. Because his whole thing was that the universe doesn't care. Mm-hmm. And then we cut to her in the present, going up. She's not even, like, looking at the Clara headstone. She's just standing next to it. And she's with a friend who's like, don't you think it's creepy in here? And she says, nah, I don't believe in ghosts. And that is the end of the episode. Well, not quite. The doctor is sprinting into the TARDIS, yelling, Clara Oswin Oswald. The TARDIS looks different.
The TARDIS is different.
Okay. I was thinking like maybe we were seeing it from weird angles or something, but is it different just this episode? Like,
no,
it wasn't last episode, right?
He's for some reason changed the TARDIS inside.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess he's like been really living on it in a way that it doesn't feel like he normally does. I would love to see a like tiny house TARDIS like episode of that show. But yeah, so, all right. It's just so weird because I know what's happening in the next episode.
Yeah.
It just feels really weird to end this one and know that. But that's what's happening.
I do have a correction. The logo resembles fresh snowfall. This is the final episode of Series 7 to display unique titles.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that it was like snowish, but I couldn't quite tell, how that can be.
The Christmas special previously had a character named Digby, but he was unseen, Uncle Digby, in The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe, and the little boy's name was Digby. So, given the timeline, it potentially could be the same person.
That's fun.
How long the Doctor has been retired is not indicated. However, dialogue between the Doctor and Vastra, and later the Doctor and Clara, suggests he has been living in his cloud for some time since the loss of Amy and Rory.
Living in his cloud. All
Yeah.
right.
And the Doctor is shown living in the 1890s London, which would place him in violation of the banishment handed down by the still reigning Queen Victoria.
Ooh.
From Tooth and Claw, she banished him from the UK.
Well, sir, what a rebel.
He's not great at following rules.
Isn't that the truth? He doesn't like them.
Nope. I'm going to look and see really quick if we have any reviews. Nope. Nope. The last time we got a review was 3 months ago, guys.
Well, what can you do?
What can you do but make you feel
Do
guilty?
it. Come on, guys. All right. Well, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this one up?
No. I'm good.
Okay. Well, guys, you know where to find us. Facebook.com/UnspoiledPod, Twitter at Unspoiled Show, Instagram at Unspoiled Podcast, UnspoiledPodcast@gmail.com, UnspoiledPodcast.com. I recently posted the free episode for you guys to listen to if you would like of Unspookled. If you are not a patron already and you were interested in hearing that, it's on the front page of the website. And I just kind of like redid a little bit of the website so that new episodes were a little bit easier to find at the top of the page. And I loaded up the Spreaker embedded player on there, which will be a little bit easier for me on certain shows than trying to upload episodes myself every week, because I am not on top of that shit at all. And also, Miles and I just wrapped up Mistborn, so we are going to be starting Midnight Sun next week.
Oh my God.
And Rashawn and I have gotten into A Song of Ice and Fire proper now, so if you guys want to listen to that, you can find that on iTunes, on your podcatcher, or whatever. All right, guys. Well, thank you all again so much for listening. We love you, and we will see you next week with a new episode that I have seen already, but it'll still be fun. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye.